Welcome, folks. And today's webinar, a co-host is Vincent Francoeur, and his topic is how to manage your personal and professional life when they intersect with the community you work within. So welcome, Vincent.
Hi, welcome. Nice to see you.
You too. So Vincent, tell us, why did you choose this topic to present in the webinar?
I chose this topic because it's something that was never really discussed with me, or nobody really has answer for me. I started working in the non-for-profit sector with gay, bi, and queer men when I was actually fairly young. I was 21, 22. I worked part-time in a non-for-profit, and I was a bartender part-time. And right away, I was seeing one notable case where I was doing HIV testing at the time, and I did an HIV test for someone to whom I served a beer only a few hours later, who recognized me. And that was the first time that I realized how there would be a crossover with my personal and professional life. And then as I continued graduating and getting more knowledge about this, there's a code of ethics for the I'm a registered psychotherapist, but it's not really addressed in this. The code of ethics is made for like living in a large city and not really coexisting with the same population. So I just thought it's a topic we need to talk more about, and that if nobody was going to talk about it, I would.
Yeah, it's a very unique topic to our community, and we have a lot of LGBTQ men who provide counseling services in our community, and our community is rather small and insular in some ways. So for the counselors who are listening, especially the LGBTQ2 counselors who also have gay men as clients, how do you approach this topic generally, especially at the first session?
Yeah, the first thing that I do, then that's something I guess I've learned the hard way that now we used to not do, and now I do every time, is that I talk about confidentiality and the fact that I'm part of the community on the first session with everyone. And now I even do it with people who are not part of the community, as far as I know of. I just do it across the board for everyone. So I take more time to talk about confidentiality. What happens if they see me on the street? What happens if they see me on social media and things like that? So really putting it out there so that when it happens, that I'm at the same gym as them, or that I'm shopping tomatoes right next to them, they're already aware that this is the kind of thing that happens to me regularly, and that it's not awkward, and they already have some sort of like guideline. I always say the same thing. I always say I let people talk to me first. So that's the way I do it. I know a lot of professionals who are doing it this way, who just, if you say hi to me, I'll be happy to say hello back and like, chat a little bit about the weather, but we're not going to go for a coffee or anything like that. And if you see that I'm with some people, or if you are with some people and you don't want to talk to your therapist, that's totally fine. And I won't be offended if you ignore me. So I just put this out there as quickly as possible. And it has worked for the most part at avoiding small situation that could be a bit embarrassing.
Okay. So yeah, really letting them know right up front what to expect should your paths cross in the community, and how you're going to react, which is based on what they're going to do. If they're going to acknowledge you, then you'll acknowledge them back. But if they don't acknowledge you, then it's just like you don't even know them.
Yes, and a small secret is that I've been working in the gay community for a really long time, and some of the people that I've worked with now 7 or 8 years ago, I don't really remember them. So it's if I see them and I don't recognize them, that takes care of this too, because they just think that I'm being careful and mindful of their privacy.
Right. So, how do you manage your personal life when it comes to, say, dating apps or other sexually charged areas like a gym or a bathhouse or a sex party? and you come across or run into somebody who's a client?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Like, it's one thing to see someone walking down the street, and it's another thing, seeing them if I'm in the back room of a bar, or if I'm at Henlitz, which is a notorious cruising spot of Toronto. I'm not going to say that the way that I'm doing is the universal way to do it. I try to be mostly aligned as much as possible with my code of ethic with my professional college, knowing that there are going to be more crossover because I'm part of a smaller community. So to start answering your question with dating apps, I don't talk about dating apps when I talk about the confidentiality, like I was just saying, but I talk about social media. And I feel like a lot of people, I'm hoping that a lot of people are adding the two together in their brain. So when I say, don't add me on Instagram, don't add me on Facebook, I'm assuming that for most people that includes don't woof me on Scruff, or don't talk to me on Grindr. So that's where I start. And then the other thing that I do is that also, if I'm going to be on dating apps, I choose those dating apps that I can block as many people as I want. Especially, like, for example, if I'm turning on Grindr in a new area of the city where I know that my full grid is going to be full of new people, I often really quickly do a scan to see if there are some people that I should automatically block because I recognize them as clients or former clients. If they do talk to me, I just tell them politely, like, sorry, I cannot engage with you. This is my professional life. If you need anything, and then I give them my work email address and say, like, you know what, if you still need support, you can contact me there. And yeah, that's how I deal with dating apps. As for sexualized places, and again, that's a personal choice that I did for my professional career, is that just in Toronto, where I live and where I work, I avoid them. That was a personal decision that I made. So I will go to a place like Henlands on the beach, but I will avoid walking through the bushes. I will go to a bar like the Black Eagle, but I will avoid going to the second floor where there's cruising area. I will avoid bathhouses. I know other therapists who don't avoid those things, and that's fine. I think there's a line with respecting where people are professional, but for me, I just decided to avoid them.
Okay, so for the clients, again, it's at that initial session where you sort of set out the boundaries of what to expect in certain contexts. But then, and that's around the dating apps. But then I hear when it comes to actual environment or spaces that are sexualized, you sort of make that personal sacrifice not to go into the back rooms or to sex parties or that sort of place.
Yeah, and I think sacrifice is a good word. Not like it's retching part of me to not be able to go to these places. At the end of the day, like, I know that for me personally is not something that I particularly like. Cruising in public spaces is not something I'm the most comfortable with anyway. That's sort of like a personal preference. So I'm not that sad that I had to give them up, but it is giving them up too. One other thing that I do also for dating app that I forgot to mention is that, as a general rule, I don't send naked pictures to anyone on dating apps, which is also a really good filter for a lot of people. That's all they're interested in. So when I say no, they stop talking to me, because I always feel like if I exchanged a few, like, hey, how are you messages with someone, and they end up, coming to get services where I work, that's not super awkward. But if they seen, you know, everything that I have to offer on pictures, to me, that already makes it a little bit more awkward. So that's also a personal sacrifice that I've done. But for me personally, I found that it's a good thing now, because it really filters a lot of people that I'm actually end up not being interested in on dating apps. So you win some and you lose some, I guess.
Wow, so an unexpected advantage or bonus through that. Yeah, I get your point. Yeah, if they see you in your birthday suit and then they end up being a client, it can be kind of awkward at that first session because, that's all they're imagining is you in your birthday suit.
Yeah, and it's not just client, right? Where I work, we have a lot of volunteers. We engage in the community. It's a lot, and it's everywhere. So it's just been easier for me to just stop sending nudes. Again, that's just for me. I know of some people who continue. That's just been for me. I know also of psychotherapists that will go on Grindr or dating apps and post like torso photos without their face, and that way they get to filter. I post my face so people could recognize me as the person that works at ACT. It's a preference to what people do, but I know most people who work in the field, it's at least something that they've thought about and talked with their colleagues or friends, and everybody has a little bit of a tweak that they do. And I'm lucky because Toronto is already a really big gay community. Even though it's a small community, it's bigger than if I was in a smaller city. Just the difference between Montreal and Toronto has been very noticeable for me. So I can't even imagine being in a smaller town than Montreal and being part of the community and working the community.
Yeah, it would be harder to be anonymous in the smaller cities and smaller towns. So, final question. How do you approach when a client has a crush on you or perhaps comes on to you? And also, the corollary of that, how do you deal with when you find you're attracted to a client?
Um, that's a good question. Both of these things have happened to me in the past, and will most likely continue to happen. The easiest one to deal with is the second one. Like if I sort of like have a crush or even a friendship crush on a client. Again, we're talking about sacrifices that just comes with the reality. That's a personal choice, and it's also in my code of ethic that I cannot form close friendships with the people that I work with. So I'm just, it's just one person that unfortunately, maybe they're the man of my dream, and we will never know. Talking about it with friends and colleagues also really helped. And then on the contrary, if people have a crush on me, that to me as a registered psychotherapist, I can just use it in therapy. So that has never really been a big deal. It's a little bit embarrassing the first few times, but after a while, transfer and counter transfer are so predominant in our work that now I just use it. I'm almost curious, like, why was it important for you to tell me that? Why was it important for you to tell me you had a sex dream about me? And that to me, I don't shy away from it. I just take it and use it right away in therapy. And most of the time, it has had interesting result. And then we never, like, it seems to settle it in their brain, and they get past it, and then we're able to continue to have a relationship.
Oh, so you don't pretend it didn't happen. You actually step into it and unpack it.
Yeah, yeah, that's really what I do. The one thing that I pretend that doesn't happen is if one of my clients talk about having a crush on one of my friend or someone that I know. If they bring up someone that's not in therapy that they don't know that I know, and then they talk about this person, then I pretend like I don't know this person. It has never happened to me yet that client service user of mine has started very seriously dating one of my close friends. And I guess if this were to happen, I would probably have to have a talk with says client about, like, at some point they would realize what's happening, and we would need to, if I'm still working with this person, it would need to be a serious conversation about what's happening with our working relationship, what's happening with your relationship with your friend, and how we can move forward, respecting everyone in that case. But knocking on wood that I don't have to cross that big of a river at any point in my career.
Yeah, it sounds like you take that very open and authentic approach to it if it came to the point where you had to discuss it with your client.
Definitely. Sometimes long discussions are needed, sometimes just small nonverbal cue acknowledging, like, you go to a birthday party or a small party with only 10 people, and then one of the 10 people is just someone you know. Sometimes it's just of a nonverbal, like, hey, this is awkward, I'm going to try to leave as soon as possible. Normally me or the other person tries to leave as soon as possible, or we're able to talk about it and put barriers and boundaries to make sure that we can continue to both live our lives.
Wow. Well, that's an excellent point to leave it. So thank you, Vincent, for sharing the best practices of what gay counselors can do when our personal lives intersect with the lives of our clients.
I'm not sure if they're like the best practices, but they're the one I've developed for me. And if you have other things to say, I'm really happy to continue to talk about this. And I think it's a conversation that we need to start having more broadly as the work is changing. I think when ASOs, like aid services organizations, were created not so long ago, it was normal for this dual relationship to exist. The workers were helping their friends, their lovers, their family. And as time goes, it's slowly changing. And these are like new conversations that we need to have.
Okay, great. Thanks, Vincent.
Thanks for having me.